Hi all, let's have a quick review of another game from the London Chess Classic. Wesley So was playing white against Michael Adams. So this is in round 2 of the London Chess Classic 2016. So we see d4, and actually after knight f6, c4, e6, we see the Catalan. This is really getting popular nowadays. It keeps a lot of tension in the position quite often. d5. This is the most principled way of playing it with black. Classical. Bishop g2, bishop e7, knight f3, white castles. Sorry, black castles. White castles. D takes c4. Queen c2. This is all pretty standard book moves so far, actually. Quite often queen takes c4 is played here. But in this game we have the alternative, which is very popular as well, a4. Bishop d7. Now white takes. Bishop c6. So black has clamped down on the e4 square. It seems quite logical. Black doesn't seem to have any bad pieces. Bishop g5. Now here, bishop d5 is quite often played. For example, bishop d5, the queen dropping to d3, c5. And this position is about equal. But here we see actually a5. And there's actually a plan behind a5 which is quite novel looking. It does have the perk of marking the b4 square. Now the novel plan here is rook a6 actually. It looks a little bit unusual. Quite often actually in this position, what's been seen before quite a lot over 200 games is knight a6. For example, white playing bishop takes f6 to be able to play e4. And games are continued from this position. And it's thought to be a slight advantage for white. It seems pleasant enough with the pawn duo, but black's got the two bishops. It's an interesting position to play from. Here, yes, the quirky looking rook a6. So quite often here e3 is played. There's a little bit of novelty actually. The rook can put some pressure down the b file, and quite often players play e3 and after rook b6 just drop the queen back to e2 and we get games like this. But here, okay, I'm not sure it makes such a big deal, just queen going back to d3, rook b6, and we see queen c2. So we're out of territory now, of major charted territory. It looks maybe a little bit strange to have this rook here. h6, and white doesn't play bishop takes f6 in this position. Bishop d2. We have bishop b4. Black does seem to have a good bind on the e4 square. After rook fe1, we see actually the move bishop takes f3, which does seem a little bit on the committal side, but the idea is to be able to get the knight to c6, it seems. Here, if e takes, that rook can actually be used here effectively with rook d6. And this position is quite interesting for black to have. For example here, bishop takes d2, rook dropping back. That's quite interesting for black. So maybe even a small advantage for black. Yeah, I mean, look at the structure. So white took with the with the bishop on f3. If queen takes d4 here, then there's bishop e3. So we see knight c6, e3, and it's interesting. Black can actually slowly play for e5 here, it seems, with queen e7. But black elected, for example, queen e7, e5. It doesn't seem entirely bad for black here. It seems quite okay. But a small advantage for white. That is a concern. The rook looks awkward. But here we see an immediate e5. And white doesn't want to activate black's position. I think this would be a mistake. Let's just check this. This looks to be too much like an activation for black. Black would actually be immediately slightly better, it seems. In this sequence, black's slightly better. There's a lot of pressure being on white's position. It doesn't really matter about that light square bishop, it seems. So actually, white committed to just giving up the fianchetto bishop. Bishop takes c6. We have e takes d4. and see, because otherwise d takes e5 is going to follow. So e takes d4, hitting the knight. Bishop drops back, and it seems a slight fracturing of white's pawn structure here. But white does have, he retains, Wesley So retains the bishop here. Rook a b1, not minding to swap off that rook. He wants pressure on the b file. The rook centralizes, hitting d2, that's protected. Now the b7 pawn is protected, and we have c4 with the idea of bishop c3. So can white use the bishop here? Queen e7, bishop c3. Black doubles. White doesn't mind the trades of rooks that could result. Queen e6. And now we have one pair of rooks coming off. And then the other pair, leaving the queen on d1, looking at d8. So question, is c4 en prise? Black played bishop d6. If queen takes c4, there's a forcing sequence. Bishop takes. And actually here, can you see a key move for white, which seems good? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, bishop d5 will be good in this line, it seems. With the idea of queen h5. Black would have to be extremely resourceful here, like this. But even so, the check here, white ends up better in that variation. Okay, so we see actually black not taking this pawn. We see bishop d6. Now that pawn's actually protected, and this battery here is set up. Queen e8, hitting a4, that's actually protected. Queen c6, threatening maybe queen e4 to simplify, leaving white with a less solid pawn structure than black. That stopped with bishop c2, king f8, and now white plays e4 with e5. Although he has weakened the diagonal a bit, bishop c5. Check, bringing the knight back. And now that kind of weakness of the last move, it's not holding d5. So queen d5, white would welcome strengthening the pawn structure. Michael is in a bit of a difficult position here. Let's have a quick look. He actually played queen g6 here. If he does take on d5, it just seems to improve white's pawn structure. Maybe best is actually c takes d. And this looks very pleasant for white with e5 coming up maybe. This looks like a very pleasant position to aim for. It's an advantage for white. So we have actually the queen running away to g6, king g2, king e7. But now there's a little bit of a downside of the queen on g6, f4. It seems a bit scary, this f5. And look, the knight and queen, that g7 looks a bit vulnerable potentially. c6, queen d3. Now black needs to be treading very carefully here in the light of this forcing move available at all times. And this may have been not the best move, basically. Knight c7 was played. Yeah, knight c7. Maybe best is queen d6 here. And actually black can avoid losing even the g7 pawn. If we look at this position, if we take on d6, maybe it's even possible to take with the knight here, because actually we're hitting c4 anyway. But in the game, what we get is a disaster move, knight c7. And I wonder if you can spot why this is a disaster. I'll give you the first move. f5 actually is used, and it looks as though doesn't that just suppress the knight. But actually there's a move here which is very unfortunate for black. Very, very unfortunate for black. Can you see white to play? If I give you 5 seconds here. White to play and win actually. The unfortunate forcing move, bishop e5, is dual purpose here. If the knight moves back, say to e8, can you see what white does? This bishop f4 actually traps the queen. If queen g4, bishop d1, trapping the queen. If queen f6, then e5 traps the queen. Yeah, so bit of a disaster. Knight e6 was played in desperation. After takes, black hasn't really got anything here. He can't take this bishop, actually. He resigned. If he takes the bishop, then there's check. And wherever the king moves, well, if it's here, check. This doesn't bode well, does it? This line. Let me see if there's greater accuracy on that, just for the record. 100% check this position. It's a mate in 4. Check. Check. Yeah, no, that is good enough, what I've mentioned. And of course, if the king went there, then there's rook, queen takes f7, there's checkmate immediately. Yeah, unfortunate. Yeah, these forcing moves were deadly, even at super GM level. White had the bishop pair, though. I mean, the source of it is having the bishop pair, that dark square bishop. And the light square bishop, although it's kind of blocked in, it is potentially dangerous across different light square diagonals. So, yeah, okay, yeah, this was it after f takes. Black resigned. Okay, an interesting encounter in the Catalan. Shows the nature of the Catalan. It does keep a lot of tension and is a popular choice at super GM level generally. Quite a dangerous weapon of choice. And actually this game took Wesley So on the live rating list apparently into the 2800 FIDE rating club for the first time. So quite an important historical game as far as Wesley So's rating achievements are concerned. So congratulations to Wesley So. Okay, comments, questions, likes appreciated. Thanks very much.